and we were role playing and, doing different things, but just having, okay, how are they going to do this? What tools do they need to do this? What's going to cause problems in getting this done? What would I consider a job well done? What would I consider a job not well done? All of those are questions. And if you actually can ask all of those and then obviously fill them in with an answer, then you actually create that clarity where, and contractors and the people that they hire, they crave that clarity. They
Yeah.
really do
Yep.
crave it. And you can have workers that are kind of mediocre workers rise to the occasion and become A players in your business purely by filling in the questions that are going on in their mind that they don't have answers to.
Welcome to Sharpen the Spear podcast, where we help manufacturing executives command the front and win the floor. I'm Richard Walsh, creator of the Sharpened Impact methodology, and I spent decades helping leaders transform frontline teams, unlock hidden profit, and capture capacity they didn't even know they had. If you want to see where your leadership gaps are costing you and how to fix them, head over to grittolead.com and run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator today. Let's sharpen your edge and get started. And we are back on STS, Sharpen the Spear podcast, with another incredible guest. I've got Liz Chism with us today. And Liz, no one knows Liz better than Liz. So, Liz, we need backstory. Bring us up to speed, and we'll get into the conversation.
Hey everyone, I'm Liz Chism, and the short story is that I spent the last 5 years, longer than that being a business owner, but the last 5 years helping contractors and home improvement, home service type businesses scale their business. And a lot of times people wonder, like, how in the world did I get to this place? I'm a mom, I'm a homeschool mom, so I have 3 kids that usually have their schoolwork all around me when I'm working. And it actually started way back when I was 9 years old. Now, I asked at the beginning of the podcast how long my story should be, and I promise it'll be short. But it starts at 9 years old because I had the privilege of being homeschooled myself. And because of that, the way my mom set up the homeschooling is that we had to get all our schoolwork done by Sunday night. And then if we did, we could work with dad. Now, we didn't have allowances growing up, but we could get paid working for my dad. And my dad's a third generation contractor. So I actually grew up in this field. I grew up building custom homes. He started out as a floor covering contractor, so I can lay any kind of flooring you can possibly imagine because I've been doing it since I was 9 years old. And so fast forward a few years, my dad started giving me more and more responsibility. And so if you remember, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but those old humongous computers that were gigantic dinosaurs, I actually saw one in a museum the other day when I took my kids to a museum. And I would actually run my dad's books and all of his receipts and his accounts payable and accounts receivable all in QuickBooks on that computer. And so fast forward a few years, I met my husband. We started home brewing. We decided to launch into owning our own brewery. So that's when my husband and I actually both quit our jobs and went full into entrepreneurship. That was 12 years ago. And here we are. We've built multi-million-dollar businesses. We've built multiple multi-million-dollar businesses. We like to collect LLCs, especially here in Idaho. It's pretty cheap and easy. So we keep everything safe. And now I have been helping, for the past 5 years. But one more story that I want to add, just so that you guys understand where I came from, because when I started the brewery, I made all the mistakes that most people make. And that led me to working 100-hour weeks. And when I say 100-hour weeks, sometimes it was even 120 hours, if I was going to be honest with you. And my husband and I wanted to start a family, and there was no way that I could start a family because as a brewery owner, I wasn't just the wife who sat in the office and did the marketing and the finances. I actually was the head brewer. I made all the beer. I built all the recipes, designed them all, and I won lots of competitions. And so because of that, I was the bottleneck of my own business. And it wasn't until I figured out through a lot of pain and suffering how to get my business to run without me so that way I could go start a family. And so we did start a family. And we were able to actually travel, take some time off. And when we went to China for 2 weeks on a beer tour, the distributors in China, because we distribute all over the world, they flew us out to China. Google doesn't work in China. So we had to have everything running so that we had zero contact with our business for 2 full weeks. And when I came back from that, our business was thriving without us. which is kind of humbling because you're like, I'm not needed here as much as I thought I was. But also, that's when people started coming to me, specifically contractors, asking how to get out of the day to day operations. So that is the full backstory, and that will launch into lots of conversations for the rest of this podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome, Liz. Well, just for the record, I am a homeschool father. Okay, so 6 kids, took them all the way through. They're all out of high school now, or that age, anyways. But yeah, what a great experience, and it does give you a lot of opportunity to do things like businesses. And a lot of my kids spend a lot of time in my businesses. I've had multiples as well. Great experience, and you kind of see the fruit as they get older. But you're exactly right on the contractor stuff. I mean, I wrote Escape the Owner Prison. That's why we're going to have a great conversation, because I know exactly what you're talking about. I spent my first 20 years doing those hours, doing everything, right? I mean, I had people, but I couldn't let go. So I think it's really important, and you see this all the time in the contractor space. Okay, and I've worked with tons, right? They got a skill, they have a craft, whatever it is, they start a business because they don't want to work for someone else, and they make a little more money. And I describe it like this: first 2 years in any business, you're wearing all the hats, you're working really hard, right? But next thing you know, it's 10 years and you've repeated the first two 5 times. And that's where these
100%.
people are, right? So they're on the golden hamster wheel. Okay, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't get off, they can't figure it out and everything else, and you had said a great thing that you were the bottleneck in your business. And I can make a very general and blanket statement that every owner is that person.
Yep.
They are the biggest problem in the business, regardless of what they think. And what I have found, I love to get your thoughts on this too, is we go in to help these contractors, these business owners and things like that. It's I don't know about you, but I never start with that. Like, you're the problem. Okay. Because I know me, like, you told me that, I'd be just, well, once you stop your nose from bleeding, then you'll know, you'll say maybe that wasn't the thing to do. But it's a different approach you got to take, because that revelation doesn't always come to these owners until they see kind of the fruit or the lack of fruit of their actual labor, right? So what does that look like when you're interacting with these people?
So you're 100% right in the sense that you can't go into a business and just talk down to business owners and talk about how they are the bottleneck and they are the problem. What's interesting is a lot of times, as I'm working through the different exercises that I do with the contractors I work with, they end up figuring it out
Right.
themselves. And they say, wow, I've hired 3 people before coming into your program and they've all not worked out. I think I'm the problem. And I'm like, yes, you are the problem, but it's really hard to work on yourself. It's a very strong leadership skill to be able to put that mirror up and to be 100% honest with you. And it takes a different mindset to go from in the field to being in the office and working in your business to working on your business. It's not the fact that you're doing different tasks. It actually takes a completely different frame of reference, a completely different mindset shift. And so when you have a business owner that's pushing themselves from the field to the office, and usually it goes a yo-yo back and forth a little bit. It's not just a clean break. It's okay, we're in the office 1 day a week, and then we're back in the field 4 days a week, and then we make it 2 days a week, and then we finally get to 5 days a week, and we're there for a couple weeks, and then something happens, and then we have to jump back into the field, and it's this slow progression without the right systems and processes in place. But what ends up happening is that they end up taking the field mindset into the office and
Mm.
trying to apply the same tactics without actually taking that step back and understanding where's their business going and where do they want it to go, not where's it going to go by default, because they're not actually being intentional. And so I start everything with first simplifying their business. Because if we're trying to systemize and take off hats and trying to organize chaos, if I organize 10 pieces of chaos, that's a lot of work, versus if I just eliminate 8 of them and focus on 2, then it makes it a lot easier. And so once you kind of decrease the clutter, you can start realizing what you need to focus on. And once you do that, that's where business owners end up having that clarity, and they're like, oh, this is the mindset shift that I need to take now that I'm not dealing with all of this. And it's really just saying no to jobs. It's setting the standards of what you want your business to be at, the non-negotiables, and then you have to just move on from there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I talk about this a lot with guests, with my clients, really understanding who they're serving. That's part of the elimination process, right? Because they're trying to make money every way they can. They're spinning 12 plates. A lot of my clients, they're doing 12 jobs at a time, and they're 5-person operation, a 6-person operation with some subs. And I'm like, well, why don't we get down to 4 jobs at a time that are making you triple the money? Let's do
Uh-huh.
that. That's the way to go, and you'll be a lot happier. Let's give that a shot. And then we who are you serving, right? Deciding that. And I love your saying, because we got a big thing that says automate, delegate, eliminate. Okay, so you just talked a little bit about elimination, and my other thing is, well, you have to eliminate you as the owner, right, from almost everything. We try to get them to their 5%, the 5% only they can do in the business, right? Same principle. So I love that you take this approach, Liz, because I think too many contractors, and this isn't a dig, it's just the thought process. And a lot of times when the herd is doing something, everyone just becomes part of the herd. Everyone's done that. You ask them, why do you charge what you charge? I don't know. That's like the going rate. Oh, that's some serious math right there. You know, so I just, so we want to have true quantification. Like, well, what does that really mean? What could you get? They don't know. And again, like you said, when you're able to start lifting those veils, if you will, and they start seeing the stuff from that the different viewpoint, like you said, and I really like what you said about taking the field tactical work and bringing it into the office. Yeah, it's a disaster. Okay, it doesn't work. So let's talk about that a little bit, because that shift is really hard, especially if they've been. And most of the people that we're coaching, and I'm making an assumption here, but they've been in business 5, 7, 10, 15 years. Okay,
100%.
they're not. Hey, I just started last month. Let me get a coach. No one's doing that. Okay, and just an extra caveat: we don't want to work with those people. Because they got to. I always tell them, you need to go get some scars. You got to go get punched in the face. You got to do a little bit of work. You got to figure a lot of stuff out so you can appreciate what we actually bring to the table. So check back in
Exactly.
2 years. So it's all that. But let's talk about that tactical into what I call the strategic, because that's kind of what you're doing, right? Taking them from the tactical, put the fire out, build this, solve this problem, to the strategic.
So, my favorite word in business is the word clarity. So, if you replace every time you say, I need systems, and you replace that word systems with clarity, and you say, I actually need clarity, there's a shift that happens. And so a lot of times when business owners are shifting from the field to the office, they're like, well, I just need systems. I just need something. And I'm like, cool. Like, here's my SOPs for a project manager, but it's not going to help you because they don't have clarity on what happens. And the contractors I work with, and I'm assuming you work with too, they are excellent at their craft.
Mm-hmm.
They are true craftsmen. They really do a phenomenal job. I mean, we're talking top tier contractors
Right.
that have been doing this for years and years. My dad would be one of them. I mean, he can build anything out of anything and troubleshoot any issue and make it better than it was before. And so when you have to let go of that because you have to rise to being that leader in your business so that your business can grow, a lot of times we kind of just drop a bunch of random, I call it throwing up information
Mm-hmm.
onto the field and expect them to have the same level of care, attention to details, and what we actually mean in that. And then what ends up happening is that the field doesn't actually do what the owner thinks that they should be doing. And so then the owner constantly is jumping back, and that jumping back creates distrust in your organization, and it also doesn't give the owner that ability to try on that new hat and be comfortable in that new skin. We talk about like thermometers sometimes in business, and it's like, if you raise the thermometer, you're like, oh, it's a little hot, I'm not used to this, and you put it back down. You're like, oh, okay, this is more comfortable. That's kind of how it is with contractors, is they jump into the office and then fires happen on the field and issues happen and the clients complain, and then they got to jump back. And so they can never actually have that moment or that time to kind of settle into the new role that they have. And so some of the things that I like to do is make sure that there's clarity on expectations, clarity on what the standard actually is, and clarity on check-ins, which some people call them KPIs. Contractors don't really like official words. So, that check-in of like, can it run without you? And so when you have clarity around that, that's when that owner can come into the office, wear the owner hat, wear the leadership hat, wear the CEO hat, and actually stay there in that place where that becomes the norm. And then obviously, if they have to jump back in the field, that's not the norm anymore. And so therefore, they know how to deal with it, but then delegate how to make those decisions in the future and then jump back onto the field because that's not where they're supposed to be anymore. And so when you have clarity in those roles, then that's where you actually can have success moving away from being in the field.
Yeah, so true. I think what you said right in the beginning is they have an expectation. Owners all have an expectation of how someone's going to perform when they just, I'm air quoting, tell them what to do. Okay. So it's the biggest, you just, if it ever happens, I see it. I have a client like that now. I'm just like, dude, you're telling them to like to do stuff like over the phone. Then you're very angry when they haven't done it the way you said, because like you don't have any operational standards on anything. No, you have these, you think everyone thinks like you. And I got to tell you, they don't. Okay. As an entrepreneur alone, you're already in a little small group. Okay, you think totally. Well, you get well, when I was this, I did this and I did this. Well, yeah, that's you. You know what? They make like $15 an hour. Okay, they aren't doing that. Okay. They have a different outlook on things. Okay, and you haven't instructed them. Like you're saying, the clarity. I love the word. I'm a big fan of that as well. But the clarity aspect of like that means like what are their boundaries? What are their guardrails? Right? How do they perform? What are the actual written expectations of this? Like telling someone, like, it's like telling someone how to do something and then leaving. No, that never works. You tell them how, he just, no, it's, let me tell you how. Let me show you how. Let me help you do it. Let me watch you do it. Okay, I can go now.
And
Okay,
then
now
you
they
have to teach it.
yes, and they may have it. You got to check back in later, but the whole thing that is if these things are not built out, and we'll put them in the systemization category, the SOPs and everything else, that's the big hang up. Especially if you have really good guys who do figure things out. If you're lucky to have a few of those people who will figure it out, but they're kind of managing your chaos. That's what they're doing, and that there's not longevity in that. Those people eventually going to leave because they're like, why don't I go start my own business? Because this is like running my own business. I got to figure everything out. I have to do this. I think I could do a better job. And then we'll be coaching those people in 5 years because they'll make all the same mistakes.
Yep. Yeah, one of
So
the best ways that I like to do something like that is really ask questions. And I call it my QP process, my question to process. And the way it works is that you have like an SOP or like, okay, this is what they need to do. Usually I pull it straight from the job description, which most people don't have.
right,
Um, so step number one, have a job description. But step two, it's like, okay, how do you do every single thing? Well, a lot of times we actually talk in statements. People don't resonate with statements. People resonate actually more with questions and being curious because when you're telling somebody to do something, especially if your attitude is more of a dictatorship type attitude, control command, you're actually working from the back of your brain, which is the fight or flight, versus when you ask questions, you're working from the front of your brain. And so by purely just switching how you ask or how you tell, then you can actually create SOPs on the fly. So the way it would work is, in fact, I did this the other day in my group coaching program. We took somebody's job description and I said, okay, everyone go off mute and ask a question. And, I highlighted which part we were on. Ask a question about this. And for the first probably 30 minutes, everyone tried to do statements. And I'm like, okay, so switch that to a question. And all of a sudden you could like hear it click in their head of going, oh, I'm not being clear at all. I am making all sorts of assumptions
right,
because I'm not actually pulling out the right information. And we were role playing and, doing different things, but just having, okay, how are they going to do this? What tools do they need to do this? What's going to cause problems in getting this done? What would I consider a job well done? What would I consider a job not well done? All of those are questions. And if you actually can ask all of those and then obviously fill them in with an answer, then you actually create that clarity where, and contractors and the people that they hire, they crave that clarity. They
Yeah.
really do
Yep.
crave it. And you can have workers that are kind of mediocre workers rise to the occasion and become A players in your business purely by filling in the questions that are going on in their mind that they don't have answers to. So they're just making up how to do it. And they're hoping that they hit it on the mark of what you wanted, but they have no idea what you actually expect.
Yeah. I tell people, I go, listen, no one wants a mystery job. It's like they don't, from day to day, from hour to hour, they have no idea what's going on, what they're going to get hit with next, asked to do this. And the worst thing is they go do it to the best of their ability. And then you show up and chew them out, say, this is totally wrong, got to do it again. Again, how long are those people going to stay around? Okay. So retention's a big deal. Okay. We really need to keep good people. And this is a great way to lose them. Okay. Because they just want clarity, to use your word. What do you actually expect of me? What does a good job look like? What is finished? There's a lot of different levels. If I use this, when you're in kind of a warehouse, I go, well, clean the warehouse. Just tell me, can you clean this up? Okay. So I go away, come back, and like stuff still messed up on the shelves. And there's a box over here and there. And I said, well, what happened? I go, well, I cleaned up. There's a broom here. I swept. See, to him, sweeping's cleaning up. Okay. Another person might have had everything dialed in, every box, everything, but that's going to be a unicorn. Okay. Because first they're cleaning, and most people don't care. Okay. And they don't even know what clean is. What are they allowed to touch, not touch? Where does the garbage go? Just as an example. But again, you can't just say a random statement. And your thing on assumptions is great. I kind of do a thing on there's no place in training for assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like I get people can have skills, but this is our way. This is the way we do it here at XYZ company. Okay. So you want to do that. So I don't have any assumptions. Okay. And I'm a military guy. So we know how to take it to the lowest common denominator. Okay. That's how everything operates, right? So just you got to start there and just kind of work your way back up, kind of reverse engineer it from there. And then you'll start seeing success from everybody,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of their skill set. You'll start to see it. So that's a really good point.
And then you also change the culture. And once you change the culture to be what you want it to be, it's very easy to incorporate new people into that and actually have them become a better person. Because
Mm-hmm.
most people don't quit a business, most people quit managers.
Yeah.
And if you're the business owner who's also the manager, and you're the project manager and you're in the field and trying to coordinate the jobs and doing all this stuff, people are quitting you because of how you're leading them. They're not necessarily quitting your business. And then, contractors complain that there's no good help anymore.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, well, they are around. You just don't have the right environment, the right culture for them to thrive. And they don't want to be in a B environment if they're an A player. And
Yeah.
so you can take B players and make them into A players pretty easily.
Yeah.
But you have to have those culture, you have to have the culture set and also have the structure set so that way they can fit in and actually thrive.
I think what's great about what you're saying there is the point of this is like, well, there's no good people. So you're telling me everyone who works for you, they don't know any good people. You just by chance got them because we're referrals are the best, right? Because most people aren't going to tell you to come work here if you're you know, a bust out. Okay, they're not going to have you come work because that reflects on you, like any referral, right? The person referring, the next person, their good names at risk. So this culture, if you haven't built a culture of A players, of people who understand exactly what their job is, how to perform it, they're going to invite others they know who'd be a good fit there to come and work at that business. But when it's the mystery job, they they only have one foot in that business anyways.
Mm-hmm.
The other one's on Indeed or wherever, right? And they're looking for another job somewhere. That's just kind of how it is because they're not fulfilled there. And if every day again is a mystery, it's all stress, it's all anxiety, it's all doubling the work because you're going back and doing it the right way this time, even though you weren't told what the right way is.
Yeah, and I think too, including into that culture is creating predictability and having that rhythm and that cadence that people can depend upon. You know, your kids wake up and they know that they're going to get breakfast when they wake up. And they know that in a few hours, then they're going to get lunch. And they know on certain days they do certain things and so on and so forth. And there's that routine. And, you know, if you are with kids, having a schedule and having a routine that's predictable can eliminate most of the bad behavior. And the same thing is true inside businesses. If your employees don't know when you're going to talk to them, what you're going to talk to them about, when they're going to have to report anything, if at all, that there's this sense of unease that they may not even actually be able to put their finger on, but it's there in your business. And so just having the predictability of this is what we do every single day. This is what we do every single Friday. This is what we do every single Wednesday. And you have these benchmarks of predictability, you can start actually resting and having the business flow because people know what to expect next versus everything's like, well, I don't know what's happening tomorrow. I'm going to show up at this address because that's where my boss told me to, but I have no idea what I'm doing. And so that uneasiness actually adds to low productivity on the job site.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's so, there's another saying called, we're defined by our rituals. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We all have these morning, I have one from 4 to 8 a.m. every day. I do all the same things, but, go to the gym, eat, whatever, I'll do all my stuff. Business it has to replicate something like that, like you're saying. They have to know the start time is the start time. And we try to keep it consistent every day. Okay. Regardless if you're going to be in the field, hey, you're starting on a job site. Do we start here? What does all that look like? What's the standard operating procedure you want on a daily basis? I really like that. And I think I do this on my contracts. Well, at the end of the day is the brutal part.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always the start. It's like, when are they done? What is finished today? What'd you get done? Who's reporting? Who's sending in the notification? Who's letting me know what actually got done? Are they talking to the project manager? Right? Are they letting them know where we're at today so they can relay that to the customer, which most contractors never do. They never talk to the customer. Right. So, but it's all these little things you can build in that really fine tune your business. And not only for your people who work for you, but your clients get a much more elevated experience because most people, everyone's got a construction horror story. Okay, if you've ever put on an addition or I don't know, built a shed, I don't. It's just like there's things, right? So they all have this anticipation of misery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but when you've designed this flow, this workflow that looks very consistent, very professional, and they start seeing this, they would do. I got more compliments on how my guys worked. They're like they have a system, like everything. They don't talk to each other. There's one guy's whistling, another guy, and they're just working, and they create this beautiful stuff. It's amazing. They just enjoyed watching them work because we had created that process and that system. Same thing. I think there's a lot of intangible benefits to having that as well as the actual, marginal, monetary stuff.
Yeah, I tell people there's three things that you need to do each week. Every day you need to have a 10-10. 10 minutes in the morning to set up the day and 10 minutes in the afternoon to put a bow on it. It's non-negotiable. 10-10. And those 10 minutes will actually save you hours and hours of productivity. And it really helps setting those goals, setting the mindset, setting, even just having a moment to connect on a personal level in those 10 minutes. And then the other one is making sure that all your jobs are on schedule and on time. And what do you need to do if they're not? So having a production meeting for 1 hour a week. Obviously, if you've got jobs that are going faster than that, yes. Or if you're with I work with a lot of remodelers that do,
Right.
it's a 3-month remodel. So they don't
Right.
have as many jobs that they're juggling. So sometimes they'll just do one a week versus two a week, for shorter jobs. And then you have 1 hour of financial review and looking at your numbers. And then if things aren't working out as well as you want them to at that 1 hour a week, then you move it to every single day and you start tracking every single day. But you can move that number around a little bit depending on if you're hitting your targets or not. And those 3 meetings will scale your business faster than anything that you do because it creates predictability and it's a muscle. It's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym for 1 hour and then skip for the next 3 months, you're not going to get strong. But if you go to the gym every day for 20 minutes, then you will get stronger, maybe not as fast as somebody who spends an hour at the gym, but you'll still see those results.
Right. Yeah. Really, really important. I think what people don't get on that is, you've got these phones and you have a lot of technology now that people are actually over relying on. Okay. So they're going, well, I'll just text them later. I'll do this. So, so you're going to text your guy at 7 o'clock at night to ask him what happened when he's in the middle of dinner with his family. I think that's an incredible strategy. Okay. That's really so make people happy, I mean? So they lean over on that stuff a little too much. It's great when you have, I mean, my son works for a large construction company and they've got a great morning app. You actually, when you PM the machine, you grease in your fuel, you enter all that. Boop, and that goes. And if they don't get that, you're getting a call. Like, so they've built some really cool things with technology that's beneficial, and not wondering if they actually did this prior to starting it or whatever. But at the same time, they're not over leveraging the technology. They may have
Mm-hmm.
to start at a different job site. He's a heavy equipment operator. They're doing demo, but they just, again, they use that. Everyone gets a notification where they're starting at what time in the morning, end of the day, like you said, that 10 minutes. Everyone's got that. Nothing else needs to be said. They get,
Exactly.
yeah, it's the way you laid it out in those few hour breaks. I think it's really good because I think overwhelm is a constant issue in the contracting world. Okay. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you got 3 jobs or 15 going at a time, there's a lot of overwhelm with that. And if you haven't put those backstops in,
Mm-hmm.
okay, where you got to come and sit and I think you said this, they have to be non-negotiable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think people, I won't do that this week. I got to get this done. Well, okay. You got to get that done because you didn't do this. Okay. So you got to do these sit downs, and the financials is huge. Like, I think
Yep.
that's a big thing where a lot of guys are not looking at their numbers, because if you're doing it weekly, you can adjust weekly.
Yep.
If you're waiting until the end of the job, really a bad time to adjust, to try to get back to your margin. That's going to be gone forever.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think too, a lot of contractors try to overcomplicate it. They think that the big companies have these complex systems and processes and this and that and the other thing. And it's actually the more simple you can get it, the more things that if you can just get it down to one, maybe two, people can only remember 3 things. Like
Mhm.
this is the 3 things that you need to do and you do it every single day, then it becomes part of what you do. So recently I went to a mastermind and the lady who ran the mastermind, her dad owns a tree trimming business. And he started this business, I want to say 53 years ago. He actually didn't start it. He bought it from someone 53 years ago. He was an employee in the business, and the guy approached him at some point in time and said, "Hey, if you work really hard, save all your pennies, you can buy me out in a couple years." And so I think at 18 or 19 years old, he bought this guy out and took over this tree trimming business. I think he got like a $5,000 loan from the bank. And they struggled and they had to go through the learning curves and they had to get some scars and different things like that. Well, fast forward 53 years, they're now a $250 million business. And the, dad, who's the business owner, spoke to all of us and he said, he's like, I'm still working in the business because I enjoy it, because I'm doing what I like to do. And secondly, I know exactly what's going on in my business every single afternoon. I get one number. Everyone logs in, how many hours or how much work they can bill against the contract for. And that work for a whole team needs to equal $950 per employee. So if they have like a customer service person and a project manager and 5 crew members, then that whole team collectively on average needs to bill $950 per person. He's like, it's super easy. And he's like, here's our performance plan. You want to know what it is? This is how simple it is. He goes, I look at all the numbers across all our teams and I get told, which numbers are too low. And okay, we have a process for how we need to raise those numbers up. And I look at whichever team got the highest number for that day. And I call them up on the phone and I say, thank you. That is their $250 million a year performance plan daily activity. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not it isn't complicated. Simple systems are what win the day, when you're doing these things. And again, it's also consistency. There's a guy who's incredibly consistent for
Yep.
53 years, right? Like
Yep.
and never discount consistency. It's truly what wins. When your people see that consistency, that also creates retention. They
100%.
know what to expect every day. If I've got a $950, income generation per day, or gross, whatever it is, like I get that. Well, what does that look like? What do we do to make this much and 100 an hour? What do we do to make 300 an hour? How do we do that? Because I have some tree trimming guys as well, tree trimming removal, and it's an interesting business. Okay, it really is. Guys who do super well, and other guys who are just making enough to pay rent next month. So, but they're all doing their thing. But you're right, and that lack of systems, that lack of simplicity, and everyone understanding what's expected of them, that's a simple metric. That 950 is great. So I love it. Yeah, I think too many people is don't go to those who have been there.
Mm-hmm.
You got 50 years in. Okay, you've made your share of mistakes, I guarantee you, but your successes far outweigh those, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then that's a great way to get time compression, like any coach, right?
Oh,
Our whole goal
100%.
is to put 10 years into one for you. Okay, we're going to save you 10 years of misery and bad decisions and costly mistakes and all that. We're going to work with you for a year and you're going to be good to go. It's that kind of stuff that I really enjoy bringing to clients. Really, it's just I can see things because I've been there, which is awesome. But then to see them not have to go through it,
Mm-hmm.
if they are indeed coachable. I have one
Yeah.
particular client. He's like the greatest client you ever want. Anything you tell him, he does. By next
Mm-hmm.
week, he did it. The next week, he did it. What we've done in 4 years is spectacular. I should
Oh,
say
yeah.
what he's done. Like
Yeah.
I'm the conductor here for the orchestra. He's the entire orchestra. But where we brought his company that had been around for 40 years when he took over, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And like where it is now, where it's going is that from a coach standpoint is like that's joy, right? If you ever coach anything, whether there's a team, people, whatever, and they actually do what you're recommending, and they see the fruit of that, so they come back for more. Tell me more. Tell me what else I should do. I love that when that snowball starts going, that's a beautiful thing. If they keep
Yep.
it going, man, it's just and I mean that I don't mean that for self gratification. What I mean for the business, because my greatest joy is seeing them create that freedom in their business through this process where now they are with their family. Oh, they do go to their kids' games. Oh, they go to the recital. They go to this. They do all that stuff. They have the vacations and all that. I always use this example. I had one client, his wife had messaged me and said, Richard, 8 years we've been in this business, remodel. He goes, I never thought this was possible. We just spent 2 weeks on the beach with all five of our kids, and he was never on the phone.
Yep.
Totally present. Like that is like, forget the money. Like I got that. Okay,
Yeah.
like it's that's why we do it. Because when you see
Mm-hmm.
that, oh man, it's a beautiful thing. It's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I have several clients that are like that too. And, some have never taken a vacation since 2015 or never. And one guy, he never made enough money in his business to be able to afford some niceties in life. And, after just a few months, he was able to buy his wife their dream home. And it's cool because it wasn't just his wife's dream home, it was a dream home that had the space so that they could host youth and have an impact on youth, and
Awesome.
has a shop that's got a ping pong table and a foosball table and a it's got like its own bathroom so they can host youth events, because both the husband and wife, they had kind of a rough childhood, and they want to be able to save the pain and suffering from other kids having that same thing. And since moving there, they've hosted all sorts of people. And so it's just cool to be able to see the little ripple effect
Yeah.
of being able to help contractors not only impact their team and impact their employees, but impact their family, and those family members and those team members impact their community, and that community makes an impact on the next generation.
That's right. I love it. I love it. I'm totally aligned with you on that. I think it's when a business can build up its people, not just the owners. We get that part right, and that's cool. And because they had a business, they're able to do this, right? Because they can decrease and increase at will if they want to, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I love like you said, the ripple effect, because if you're making your people better in your business, and that's through boundaries and control and recognition and all that stuff, and maybe you're giving them additional skills, other things that aren't necessarily, a competency thing, but an additional skill. You give them opportunity to become better as people. They take that home, and that does affect their family. And where's their family? They're in the community, like you said. So you might have 15 people working for you, but you could be affecting hundreds,
Mm-hmm.
because of that when they go to their home. So I'm a big fan of that. I think that's just one of those. I'll put it in the responsibility category. I think it needs to be a responsibility of ownership, because there's only benefit to it when you do that. And everyone will say we want to treat our people well and we want a good company culture, but they don't really define what that is. They just say you should have that, just like when they say you should have work-life balance, and they walk away with no suggestions on how to do it at all. Okay, that always
I
gives me a
like to
kind
call it
of,
work-life harmony.
yeah, the balance thing is. I always had discussed somebody like, well, nothing's ever in balance. I go, no, it's all a percentage. I always tell them there's the five things: there's faith, there's family, there's finance, there's fitness, and there's friendships. You think they're all equal? They're not. Okay, so I don't have a percentage of each that all equals 100. So, but I have a focus on those five, and they're all going to get a certain percentage of my time instead of no percentage. Right.
Exactly.
So I love doing that and putting that kind of stuff in perspective so people have a bigger vision for the company. Like you talked about earlier about, well, where are you going? What are you going to do? I want to have this. I just want to have tons of money. I'm like, wow, that's not a very good plan because there's no roadmap to get lots of money. Okay. There's so much to it, right? But people will say things they don't know what else to say, but they don't really have the vision for where they want to go. Do you do a lot of that with them? Do you really kind of work on kind of like, we really need to create the vision for where you want to take this company?
Yeah, we do a lot of work, and it was really cool because, and I usually about once a quarter kind of do that type of work because we have to refresh where we're going, what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. Do we need to adjust a
Right.
little bit? But in September, I actually hosted a contractors retreat here in Boise where I'm at. And we were able to, because everyone was in person, it's not just on a Zoom call, but really deep dive into that. And it was really cool to see people have those, oh, I'm just making a couple of goals that I thought sounded good from somebody else and kind of just borrowing visions, which
Right.
is a good place to start if you don't have one, but really giving yourself that time and space and thinking, okay, what do I want to create? And then, a lot of times we forget what the word vision actually means. And it's creating that picture in our mind of what it looks like. So when we think like, oh, I want more money, well, what experience is that actually going to bring? One of my former coaches years and years ago said, you don't want what you want because you just want it. You want what you want because of the experience it's going to give you. And so when I use, the language and trying to pull their vision out of them so they can really clarify it and understand it, it's like, what do you want to experience in 5 years, in 10 years? What do you want to be doing right now after breakfast, after dinner? How do you want to spend your evenings? How do you want to spend your weekends? Where do you want to be going on vacation? What do you want, what impact do you want your business to actually have? And it's cool because the people who can really clarify their vision tend to move faster towards that vision than people who have this kind of fuzzy, vague, I kind of want to go in that direction ish. And that's fine. They'll move towards that to a certain degree, but they don't have that drive of what they really, really want. Like this guy that I just mentioned, who wanted a house that he could host the youth. And he didn't know how that was going to be possible, but he had that in his mind. He wanted space, he wanted land, he wanted, buildings that he could be able to host. He's up in New York, so it's cold. Like he can't just be outside in the wintertime.
Right.
And so really having like, what do you want to create? You know, another guy, he's like, all my kids are grown and I wasn't the best father because I was buried in my business. And so now is my opportunity. Like I want to be able to travel and visit all of my kids. He has 10 kids and he's wants to be able to hang out with his grandkids and not be on his phone all the time and lose that opportunity again. And so, you know, when they start seeing, okay, what experience do I want? That's when the actions towards that become super clear and simplified.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, visions, we used to start with it, like really creating a vision, but it's very difficult work. So we kind of make it like second or third, once we get kind of dialed in and really learn what it is. Because I think also on vision, you have to, how does your team help fulfill the vision? You can have the vision, but how are they all a hero in that part of the journey? What does it actually look like as they work every day? Because they're fulfilling the vision, right? Now it might be yours and you have that intention, but how are they, you know, um, inspired to work towards that vision every day? What does that look like? So yeah, we get in some pretty
Mm-hmm.
deep diving with that kind of stuff because I want them to know like wherever they came from was here. Now they're here, and this is what it looks like here. And without you, none of this happens. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we're not just putting A into B to deliver to C. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole different focus on outcome. It's
Yeah.
not the product. It's like what is it doing for people and things like that. So that takes some work to build
Yeah.
that out. But once they get it, and that we usually only do like an 18 to 24-month look, and then we get there, we want to fulfill this, then we'll rewrite it again, and we'll keep moving forward. So you give people those shorter chunks, and they know when they're part of it, and then they have that sense of accomplishment. It's great to have
Yeah.
long-term vision, but most people aren't going to be there to see it, right? So you give them those pieces, how they know they're contributing to making this happen is really powerful.
Yeah, that's why I use something called the Working Genius Assessment. I don't know if you've read the book. It's a phenomenal book. It's called The Six Types of Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni. And there's an assessment that goes with it to basically understand where do you fit into it as your role into a business. And there's six different gears, they call them, that are people's geniuses. And every job, every project is a six-letter project. It takes six gears to get the project done. Somebody's got to think of it all the way down to planning for it, all the way down to doing it and finishing it. And so there's six, people that have to be connected to a project. And so when you have a whole team take the assessment and they're like, oh, I'm really good at finishing. Oh, I'm really good at problem solving. I'm really good at just being the workhorse because just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm really good at planning. All of a sudden, you can start organizing your people and they see visually where they fit. And it also checks for your frustration. So it sees where you don't fit. And so maybe you're in a position where you're really struggling and
Right.
it's like, no, we just need to shift these responsibilities to somebody else or, put in mechanisms for it or, different things like that. So that way you can actually be freed up to work in your genius. And then when you see it all work together, it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense, and then you have the ability to troubleshoot within that. So I have somebody who's really good at finishing the jobs, but she's not very good at like the ideas person. So she'll get that job done. She'll finish that punch list. She'll get a review from the client. The client will love her and, get the final check and everything. But if there's hiccups along the way, she has a hard time problem solving it. And so once you know that that's your problem, it's like, hey, I've got this problem. Can you help me troubleshoot it? And then I can go execute it. And that 5-minute conversation of going, I need to borrow your genius in this situation to help me solve my and be able to be back in my genius, all of a sudden that language and that culture is like, oh yeah, well, why don't we do this? Oh, that's a great idea. Boom. Now they're back into their zone of genius and they can finish the job. And so that's where it's really nice and it makes it really clear to see where does everybody fit in to actually reach the goals.
Yeah, that's really important because I think a lot of people they're either going to leave a company or they're going to like go from a company because they're actually not where they belong,
Mm-hmm.
right? Meaning the position. Got hired for this because they think that, okay, it's a job, I can do that. But again, it's not their zone of genius, right? So they're like, but you could shift them on the board and they can thrive in another area. It's that kind of thing. Like people come in for a particular job because they want to work and make money, and then they'll get in the business and go, man, you got this whole warehouse division. I'm kind of a big fan of warehouses. Any chance I could get over there and work? I mean, like, so you start going, well, maybe they are. And then you can move them. They can do a lateral, right? And go over there. But people don't always, they get in a job so they can survive sometimes. Sometimes they're coming in because that's what they do. We got calling, character, and competency, right? Like called to do this job. Do they have the character to work here? And do they have any level of competency towards this job? Because competency you can always improve. Right? We can always skill people up and everything else. The character part, that's the challenge, right? I'm not really going to be building people's character when they're in their 20s or 30s, but calling, do they really love this? Is this the thing they want to do? That zone of genius where they
Mm-hmm.
do well. So you defined it really well. I love it. These are little things that add up. We talked
Mm-hmm.
about a lot today, but as you start to see them stack, you can see the bigger picture, kind of a 10,000-foot view, right? We start looking at that. And that's where I think a lot of owners aren't able to get up to that level, even for a day. Get up and look down. Let's look at the whole map. Let's see everything that's going on. And I think that's one of those vital roles of a coach.
Mm-hmm.
But some of that actually they come in because they're what we call the outside eyes. They're going to come in and see things you cannot see, and it's not your fault. You're just immersed inside this. You built this. You have these, theoretical blinders on, right? So we need that assistance from the outside. That's what coaches do. That's what all the, I mean, your spouse will do that too for you. They tend to see things I don't see. My wife's real good at that. She sees a lot of things I don't see, and that comes in handy, right? So I can correct her, whatever. So, that being said, how do people follow you, get in touch with you? What do you got going on? How can you help these contractors? Because they need someone like you, Liz, to help them with their business.
Thank you. So the best place to see all my resources is just lizchism.com. So it's my name, it's my website. It's really easy to remember. I love having conversations on Instagram. It's typically where I hang out. So if you come follow me, then message me and let's have a conversation. I'm usually in the DMs a good 20, 30 minutes a day, just chatting with contractors and seeing how I can help. Some contractors become my clients eventually, and some contractors don't. Most of them walk away with some way to improve their business with every conversation. So it's really fun to just see how I can help them. And maybe it's a 5% help and maybe it's something beyond that, but it's just fun to really understand what they're struggling with and how I can maybe adjust my content to help them with what's going on in their business.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, I always tell my listeners, you have to take advantage of content. People want to get things or connections really, really powerful. And my big reminder is don't just read it, you got to do it. So we have to
Yep.
apply this stuff too. So always good to get another book. I write books. That's great. But if you're not doing what I'm writing in the books, that's not why I wrote the book. I wrote the book for you to go apply it, okay? Not just to say, look, I know so much. Like go do some of these things. If you get a little advice from Liz, go do it. When it works, well, you might want to think about getting Liz on the team. Okay, at least she can help you. Okay, so that's the big takeaway from this whole thing. What a great conversation, Liz. I truly appreciate all the time you've given us today. Any final thoughts?
I would just say that remember that learning is going to the same situation, but having a different result. And so as you learn this, as you listen to this podcast and you go and consume that content, if you go and face your business and it doesn't change you at all, then it was kind of a waste of time, to be honest. But if you can go and you have that same situation and you go, oh, I remember that they said this, and you have a different outcome, you have a different result, that's when your business is actually going to change.
Awesome. Awesome. That is awesome. And we're going to leave it right there. So, Liz, again, thank you for all the time today. Appreciate all the words of wisdom. And for everybody else, we'll see you on the next STS podcast. Thanks for joining me on the Sharpen the Spear podcast. If you're a manufacturing executive and you're serious about unlocking hidden profit, improving frontline leadership, and taking control of your floor, go to grit2lead.com right now. Run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator and discover your biggest opportunities are hiding. Don't leave millions on the table. Sharpen your spear, lead from the front, and win the floor. Until next time. stay sharp.